skies, they set the mood and they affect the lighting so profoundly in a landscape that it would be criminal not to make the most of them. So I'm going to start by having a look at how we can make our skies that much more interesting in our paintings. Lay a wash of just water across the paper first. So I'm working in the cobalt blue now into the sky area, and working onto wet paper like this will create soft edges all round for the clouds. You need a fairly strong colour for the sky, otherwise it'll dissipate far too much. So reasonably strong colour. Take it down, maybe bring a little bit of yellow ochre into the bottom, warm the sky up a little bit. But I don't work too much into this. The easiest way of getting green skies is to put your blue on and then your yellow, and then mix them up together with a lot of strokes on the brush. So the best way to avoid that is to just put it on and leave it well alone. Now we need to shape these clouds a little bit. They're getting a bit out of hand, as indeed they usually do when you use this method of wet into wet. So we just use the brush in this way to create soft edge to the clouds. Sharpen it up a little bit. Maybe take out a new cloud, and we can do that just with a damp brush, and it's quite exciting. If something is a little bit too big, you want to take it out, then just use the brush like that whilst it's all still wet. I'll put some cadmium red on the brush and we'll work a little bit into the bottom part of the cloud. This way, and then again just with a damp brush I can soften this off. It's a lovely technique, well worth practicing, and it's so simple. Sometimes you have to do these little softening off bits and pulling out bits 2 or 3 times. It depends on the amount of moisture and your timing and all that, so you might find you need to do it a few times. So like here for example, we'll pull that out again, you might feel that you really need to strengthen it a little bit, actually improve the shape of this cloud, but I have to let it dry first. So the paper's dried now, and what I want to do is to show you how you can beef up the sky just a little bit, and this is very useful where you just want to beef up part of the sky. You want the main sky area to be like this, soft edged and sort of not too strident, but maybe you want to make one part of the sky a bit stronger than the rest. So what I'm doing, I'm just wetting the sky around there and then picking up some more of the cobalt blue. This is exactly the same colour that I put on earlier, but you'll see this will be stronger because the edge is quite hard on the cloud here, because I haven't taken the wash down over the cloud. I've just put it around the edge. So having done that, I want to soften this a little bit and then feather it out into the wet area so that it's not at all discernible where the join comes. And this is a very useful technique anyway, with all sorts of situations where you want to bleed something away. So we're just creating, and if you want to give it a little bit more shape, this is the time to do it. Change it a little bit maybe, and maybe under here where we've got this gap in the clouds. And a gap in the clouds can be quite useful at times, just to create a little bit more interest. Don't want this too strong, not quite as strong as there. It's just a supporting area. And soften it in places. So you can soften part of the edges and leave some of the other edges harder if you want to. And maybe just a touch around here, fading it out to the right. So we're creating more interest in this part of the sky. One of the problems with sunsets is that they can be really overcomplicated. You can get simple ones that you see in the sky, and they're much easier to render. So where you have a sky that is a very complicated sunset, you do need to simplify it quite considerably. And if you're working from a photograph, it's easy to get into too much detail. So cut it down as much as possible. In this particular painting, it's still quite complicated, but I have considerably reduced it from what the actual scene was like. You'll see that the sun I've created as a white orb, white being the brightest tone that you actually have with watercolor painting. It's the white of the paper. If you try to make the sun red, it can make it look rather dull. But here I've put some gamboge around it, and then gone out further with some Naples yellow and then some alizarin crimson. And you'll see above the sun there is a light streak which is not quite horizontal, it just bends a little bit. That was made with alizarin crimson and left to dry, and then the darker red brought down over it to define it as a streak in the cloud. So that's negative painting, working the darker red around it to create that line of cloud. Then the darker clouds, of course, were put in wet into wet, and here I've used French ultramarine and cadmium red. And when I do that, there's very little water on the brush. It's just a damp number 4 brush I've put into the wet wash. And the wet wash, of course, was actually getting quite dry at that stage. And then lower down, I lost the detail in that purple atmosphere, taking it down over the hill. The headland really does have the same color in it, so it creates that wonderful sense of unity that you need to put into a painting like this if you want to create a sense of the sunset being a really truly atmospheric and unified overall feeling. So bear that in mind. Sunsets can be marvelous things to paint, but don't overdo them. In this painting, I bring all 3 elements together: skies, light and atmosphere, and the sky is merging here into the background of the mountain, which creates a lovely sense of mystery. And the lovely warm colours in the sky are creating this light in the focal area, in the centre of the picture, getting darker as we move out from the centre into the other areas. It's so useful, so powerful to bring in these 3 elements together if you can.